Yo, welcome back to another episode of the Hybrid Experience Podcast. You bunch of legends, thank you so much for coming back. I really fucking appreciate all of you. I really do. Like the title says, we're going to go over my 5 biggest mistakes I've made from over a decade of training. It makes me sound old as shit. From over a decade of training, I've whittled it down to 5 mistakes that I've constantly made over the years of training when trying to get in shape. Now, I'm not going to be speaking in this podcast about any sort of performance metrics. So when I'm looking at cardio, it's a form of increased output rather than a means of getting fitter. All right, so let's keep that in mind here. This isn't a performance focus kind of podcast, if you will. This is all about aesthetics. This is getting fucking in shape, getting lean. All right, for maybe 3 or 4 years, every single April 1st, I used to try and fucking diet down for 8 weeks. It was the famous 8-week summer shred. That's what it was. 8-week summer shred. In the hope that I would actually get some abs going into the summer. Not that I would actually do anything because I'm fucking pasty white, so it's not like I'm going to be walking around a beach topless, but I like the idea of doing that, right? But that never actually came. Because of these fucking 5 mistakes that I constantly made. And I think the whole purpose behind this, or the whole aim of this podcast, is to highlight some mistakes. So you don't make them. So you learn from my mistakes, all right? Surely I'm not the only one who's done any of these. I'm pretty sure that they are fairly common. But I've whittled them down to 5 of my biggest mistakes, all right? So coming in at number 1, too much cardio too early, and I'm fucking really guilty of not tracking my cardio and going a little bit too hard with the cardio. All right. Again, keep in mind of what I've just said. When I'm talking about cardio here, I'm not talking about any means to get fitter. I'm talking about a means of just extra output to help fat loss phase, to help energy balance, to help drive yourself into a deficit. All right. I'm never a fan, and never will be a fan of running to lose weight. Right? We run to become a better runner. We run to become fitter. We don't run to drop dress sizes and become lighter on the scales. I will never, ever, ever be a fan of that. So when we're talking about cardio here, we're talking about low intensity cardio, high volume, low intensity. And I was always fucking guilty of sticking the Stairmaster up on far too high of a setting, holding on for dear life, and fucking just pretty much running up the stairs. This is a surefire way of fatiguing yourself far too early in your dieting phase, right? A dieting phase, we want to make sure that we are managing fatigue as best as we possibly can. And one way that we do that is we manage volume and we manage the intensity of your training as well. And again, with your cardio, it's just a means of extra output. We don't want you to be absolutely in the bin after a cardio session. We don't want your nervous system, your nervous system to be fucked or to be fried. We need that to be as fresh as possible for the weight room. All right, for your hypertrophy work, for your strength work. All right. So too much cardio too early and too intense, and then just not tracking it. Literally at the end of the session, being right, I've got 15 minutes. Let's go absolute send it on the stair mill. Let's go absolute send it on the spin bike. Let's go absolutely send it on an incline walk, whatever, or an incline jog it was at the time. So we need to make sure that we're measuring the amount of cardio that we're doing. We're measuring and managing the intensity, and then start off with your minimum effective volume with your cardio. There's no point in on week 1 doing 2 to 3 hours of cardio because it doesn't give you anywhere to progress to. What are you going to do? 3.5 hours, 4 hours of cardio on week 3 or 4? Like, we don't want that. You want to start off with, I don't know, 2 20-minute sessions, you know, and then build from there. Once weight starts to slow down, body composition not really responding as you would like, then increase your cardio. You want to try and keep as much tools in your toolbox as possible. You want to keep as much room to progress your cardio and dropping your calories as much as possible, especially in the early stages. All right. So start with your minimum effective volume with your cardio, low intensity, sorry. So heart rate around 140 to 150, 150 being max beats per minute, and make sure we're tracking the amount of cardio that we're actually doing as well, so that we've got that data, we've got that feedback, and that we can then manipulate and adjust it if and when need to. All right. Do not make that mistake. Number 2, snowballs in to off point 1, is dropping calories far too low, far too fucking early. I was the king at this. I was the absolute boy at dropping my calories far too low. I would go from eating 4,000 calories in a gaining phase or a build phase, whatever you want to call it, and I would fucking drop them right down to like 2,000, 2,100. Legit, I would half I would half my food intake and just hope for the best. Because again, it was that 8-week summer shred. It was like, let's get in fucking shape really, really quick. And the shape that I wanted to get in was incredibly lean, which would probably take 12, 14, 16, 20 weeks to actually get into. So 8 weeks and dropping my calories drastically like that just left me in the absolute bin. We want to keep food as high as it possibly can be while still being in a deficit and still dropping body fat, because we want to maintain high levels of performance, high levels of output as well. We also don't want to be impacting our sleep or impacting our digestive system. All these things can happen when you drop your calories far too fucking early. Or far too low, far too early, should I say. All right? Yes, depending on how lean you actually want to get, calories will need to get low. And you will at times be eating fucking poverty calories. But not at the early stages. Definitely not at the early stages, all right? You need to almost earn the right for your calories to get that fucking low. And that's when we're talking about going to extreme levels and things like that, all right? So we need to make sure that your food is kept as high as it possibly can. So don't drop your calories like I did by fucking 2,000 on week 1. Because again, it doesn't give you anywhere to go. Where are you going to go from 2,000 calories? Fucking 1,800, 1,700, 1,600? Like, you don't want your calories to go down that low. Definitely don't want your calories to go that low. So we need to make sure that, again, calories are kept high so that we can still maintain high levels of performance, high levels of strength, high levels of kind of daily output. That's one thing that I always struggled with when I was dieting is, I'd drop my calories super low. And just because I would get my training sessions in and I'd get my cardio in, I thought that was job done. But then when I really started tracking like my overall daily output, that dropped massively because I had no energy. I had no real want to go out for walks and stuff like that because I was eating 2,000 fucking calories. So we need to make sure, again, I'll repeat myself for the 17th time. Minimum effective volume with your cardio, and keep food as high as it possibly can while still being in a deficit, while still being able to lose weight, just to maintain high levels of output and training performance. All right. Number 3, changing your training approach. Now, I was a bro when I first started, when I was 17, 18. I started lifting weights. And I was amongst bros. It was the case of, right, when you're bulking, when you're bulking, it's 3s and 5s rep ranges. Strength training. When you're dieting, it's 15 to 20 reps. So you go from like training really low volume, heavy ass weight, more like a powerlifting kind of strength specific kind of process or method, your dieting now, so it's 15 reps, 20 reps, 5 sets, 6 sets, 7 sets per exercise. Really like stupidly high volume. Let me tell you now, that is not a smart method. All right. High reps does not mean toned muscle. All right. High reps is muscle endurance. All right. Metabolic stress. Somewhat hypertrophy. Well, not somewhat, that's completely wrong. Hypertrophy. All right. So just because you're going to be increasing volume and increasing your reps doesn't mean that's going to tone your muscles. Muscle tone comes from low body fat and actually having muscle. All right. So just because you're dieting, do not fucking change your approach or your method of training. Regardless of what that is. If you train high volume, if you train low volume, doesn't really matter. What you've done to build your physique in a gaining phase, you need to keep that in a dieting phase, because what built it will ultimately keep it. So don't go from training that kind of Mike Menzer, Dorian Yates type of high intensity, low volume kind of approach. You know, the top set, back down set, train to absolute mechanical failure and breakdown. Don't then change from there to then, 5 sets, 15 to 20 reps, 30-second rest in between each set, high volume type of approach, right? Don't do that. If you've built your body, built your muscle in one method, stick with that throughout the entire diet phase, because that's ultimately what's going to keep your muscle. All right. No need to fucking change it. All right. Number 4. This is something that I think I'm still pretty guilty of. I'm just better at handling it now. And that's looking at others and comparing myself to others as well. This used to be a really, really toxic trait of mine. And I used to really beat myself up about it. Really beat myself up about it. Oh, fuck, I'm not as lean as them. Or, oh, fuck, I'm not as big as them. Or, they're further ahead than me. Why the fuck am I this lean? They've been dieting. I've been dieting longer than them. They look better. Their arms are better. Their abs are better, etc., etc., etc. Comparison is not a bad thing if you're comparing in a way that's going to inspire and motivate you. The way I was doing it, I was beating myself up. All right. So if you find yourself doing that, oh, her bum's bigger than mine, his arms are bigger than mine, he's stronger than me, he's leaner than me, he's dieting quicker than me, look better, blah, 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 blah. All this. If you're constantly comparing yourself in a negative light, then we need to stop. We need to create a barrier between you and that habit. Because ultimately, that's just going to derail progress. It's not going to build any sort of confidence. It's going to dent your motivation and focus to keep going. Because ultimately, if you constantly bash yourself and constantly compare yourself in a negative light to others, you're then going to talk yourself out of doing that, because your self-worth is so fucking wrapped up. You're no longer doing it for yourself. All right. So we need to make sure that, yes, you can look for inspiration and motivation from others. Nothing wrong with that. I would actually suggest we try and do that. Look at others. Be proud of their efforts. Take motivation, take inspiration from it, but never, ever compare yourself in a negative light to others. All right? Make sure we're not doing that. If you are, like me, guilty of doing that, create barriers between you and that habit. Stay off social media a bit less. Don't follow those accounts that you're constantly comparing yourself to. Do a little bit of journaling, deep what is the word? I'm having a brain fart here. Some kind of deep thought within yourself. Journal things down. Why are these thoughts coming up? Ask yourself these questions. Analyze. That's the right word I was thinking of. That's what we need to do. All right? So those things don't happen again. And then number 5, used to be very fucking bad for this. Very fucking bad for this. And that was trying to outwork my fuck ups, my bad diet. If I would overeat by 500 calories, I would then try and burn 500 calories extra. Again, that's a surefire way of fucking yourself up, beating yourself far too early, stalling fat loss. You definitely cannot outwork a bad diet. If you have, I'm not even going to say fuck up because it's not a fuck up. It's just you've had a higher calorie day. The most important thing you can do if you've consumed more calories than what you were meant to is just get right back on track. I'll say that again and listen to it. Get right back on track. Don't do extra output. Don't pull calories back from X amount of days. Just get right back on track. What I will suggest, though, is if you have a very, very popular and busy social calendar, and your social calendar consists of night out, a heavy night out once a week, then there needs to be some compromise from your calories during the week. There needs to be. So we do need to pull calories from there. But if it's just a case of you've overconsumed, then just get right back on track. All right? If you have a busy social calendar, then that should be taken into consideration. That's something I do with my clients if they are. If that's something that they really value and they need to have like a night out, or they just really enjoy having night out, then when they're in a diet phase, we take that into consideration and then work backwards from there. Right? That day is probably going to be a 3,000 calorie day. So we need to be here over a 6-day period. But if you've then overconsumed on those calories, then it's a case of get right back on track. You will never, ever, ever outrun a bad diet. And we never want to get into this overconsume, over-exercise, and under almost like this. My brain isn't working. It's this when you're over-consuming your calories and you're trying to outwork that bad diet, and then you're thinking about, right, I need to then restrict myself even more. That's what I was trying to say. We never want to get into that cycle, all right? Because that's going to lead to massive inconsistencies, massive dips in energy. You're going to fatigue yourself far too early. Again, like what I said at the start, when you're dieting, it's just about managing fatigue as best as you possibly can. All right? So those are my 5 biggest mistakes when I've tried to get myself fucking summer shape, mate. I was a little bro at heart back then. I really, really was. 8-week summer shreds every fucking year for about 3 or 4 years. It really was. And I never got in fucking shape. Never did. Because I constantly made mistakes, which led to inconsistencies, led to comparing myself, led to me then giving up. Be like, yeah, I want to get bigger anyway. Just making an excuse to not succeeding in a dieting phase. So, yeah, hopefully this episode helped. If it did, leave it a like. If you're listening to this on Spotify, share it. I would love for you to share this. So, yeah, appreciate all you for tuning in. You bunch of legends. Catch you in the next one.